have captured several key locations in eastern Ukraine, including Novakia, Nov and Solodke. Meanwhile, Russian forces, of course, have also destroyed 4 unmanned Ukrainian boats near Tuapse in the Krasnodar region. One of the boats exploded close to the shoreline, causing damage to a house, a garage and a boat hangar, although no injuries have so far been reported. Russia's air defense systems successfully shot down 71 Ukrainian UAVs across multiple regions and the Black Sea. The Ministry of Defense said 29 drones were destroyed over Bryansk, with additional interceptions in Kursk, Lipetsk and Smolensk, among other areas in the east. Okay, we're now joined by Ben Aries. He's a journalist and he joins us from Peterborough in the United Kingdom. Thank you very much, Ben, for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to have you on the programme. Of course, Moscow claiming further territorial gains in Ukraine's east, claiming to capture several key settlements. What is your analysis on the claims Russia is making? We're talking about daily gains here that are coming out of Russia's defense ministry. At least that's what they are saying. Are these meaningful territorial gains or largely symbolic moves in this kind of grinding stalemate on that eastern front right now?
No, things have changed in just the last week. So to understand the context of what's going on, that the Russian forces have been pushing in order to try and capture the whole of Donbass. This is Putin's top war goal. And it's what he's been insisting with Trump and the negotiations, that he's been insisting that Ukraine just gives up and withdraws from Donbass. And Russia doesn't control all of it, but they control about 90% of it. And what's happening at the moment since last Friday is there's an epic battle going on for Pokrovsk. Pokrovsk is a key large industrial town, a mining town, and it sits on the nexus of some important roads and also railway lines. And it's been used as a logistical hub in order to supply all of the Ukrainian defense. I mean, just to the east, there's what's called the Fortress Line, which the Ukrainians have invested into heavily, and they've built significant defenses, which the Russians are really going to struggle to take back or overcome. And they've been losing, 1,000 men a day just for the battle for Pokrovsk. But if Pokrovsk falls, then that line can't be supplied anymore. And you're facing the possibility of a collapse of the whole eastern defense. So this is really crucial. And the fighting for Pokrovsk has been going on, they took a town called Avdiivka, which is just to the east. It's only about 40, 50 kilometers away. And it's taken them 8 months to cover that for 40 kilometers. But what changed at the weekend was that Russia infiltrated some special troops, special forces into the city of Pokrovsk. And since then, we've seen the whole defense start to crumble. And they're throwing, there's like 150,000 Russian troops in the region as a whole, and there's about 11,000 who are actually involved in this battle. And they're overwhelming the defenses of the Ukrainian forces trying to hold the town. So like I say, on Friday, they were talking about 250. The last 2 days was the reports coming out, and nothing can be verified. We're relying completely on military bloggers because there's hardly any journalists in the city at all. But they're talking about somewhere between 60 and 95% of the city has fallen. And that's caused a problem because Myrnohrad, which you mentioned, there's actually a cauldron around that town, which is 5 kilometers to the east. And the Russians have pinched off the access, the supply lines to that. So it seems several hundred of Ukraine's best paratroopers are now caught in the city, which is actually fairly easy to defend, but they can't get out and they can't be supplied. And so we're just waiting to see what happens then, whether they will surrender, whether they will be destroyed, whether they will attempt a breakout. But this is a crucial battle. It could be a turning point in the war, and it's going very badly for the Ukrainian side.
Ben, thank you very much. Do stay with us as we move from the battlefield over to the world of diplomacy, where the Kremlin says Russia remains open to resolving the Ukraine conflict through diplomacy, but officials admit the situation is currently at a standstill. Responding to US President Donald Trump's remarks about the war ending in the near future, Moscow said it also wants the conflict to end as soon as possible. The Kremlin spokesperson stressed that while negotiations continue, there are no immediate breakthroughs and tensions remain high on the ground. Ben joins us once again. The Kremlin says it's open to diplomacy and even echoed Donald Trump's remarks about ending the war. Given the past, of course, of Moscow's actions, denying ceasefire deal again and again and again, do you believe Moscow is serious this time, or is it just more diplomatic theatre here?
Going on here, it is open to ceasefire negotiation, and Lavrov, the foreign minister, has said recently, he said I think yesterday, that he's willing to talk to Marco Rubio again and meet and possibly face to face. But he also said that if he does meet with Rubio, that it has to be, America has to take into account the realities on the ground, which is basically Putin's maximalist demands. What they're looking for is basically a capitulation by Ukraine, for the American side to believe that the situation is hopeless and that getting Trump to push Zelensky into basically signing a surrender agreement. And that's what's going on. So that's the talks. And for Putin and the Kremlin, they keep, making these nice statements about how they're open to talks and what have you. Because you also have to bear in mind in the background that the Russian economy is really under a lot of pressure. It's really starting to hurt. They're facing recession at best. They're facing a debt crisis at worst because of the pressure of the cost of the war. And so Putin wants to get out of it. And Trump represents, for Putin, an opportunity, because the man's a deal maker and doesn't really believe in ideology, of lifting all the sanctions that are on Russia in exchange, not just for a ceasefire and give Trump another Nobel Prize winning peace deal, but also Trump is extremely interested in doing business with Russia. He's looking at minerals, he's looking at oil and gas, and he wants to do that deal. Trump has said from the beginning he wants to do a deal. So the Kremlin's being careful to be nice to Trump in the hope that Trump will sign off on one of these mineral deals. And if you remember in the peace talks, the aid of the States to Ukraine, that started with a minerals deal for rare earth minerals. And Trump would like to do the same thing with Russia. So there is an opportunity, but it all turns on, Putin thinks he's winning on the ground. And as I just mentioned about what's going on in Pokrovsk, he actually is winning on the ground. So he has no incentive to compromise. So he's just going to say, okay, either you capitulate and give in to our terms, or we're going to defeat you militarily. And because it's going so well on the battlefield, I think he's just taking his time. So there's very little common ground. There's almost no wiggle room. This war is going to continue, I think, until Putin thinks he's got his military victory.
Ben, do stay with us once again. Thank you for explaining that with such clarity. We have some statements coming from the Ukrainian president where he said that Ukraine is seeking to order 27 Patriot air defense systems from US companies while asking European allies to lend crucial systems also temporarily. Russian strikes have intensified, hitting energy infrastructure and shutting down all state-run thermal power plants. Zelensky emphasized ongoing support from allies is vital as long as Russia's war continues, urging President Putin to stop. He praised his White House visit in October, highlighting a strong relationship with the US president. But Ukraine continues to press for advanced weaponry, including Patriots. Ben, Kyiv is seeking 27 Patriot air defense systems from the United States. How big of an ask is that?
It's massive. It's wishful thinking. I mean, they simply don't exist. So look, the Patriot missiles, so Ukraine has been famously developing its drone industry, is producing 2.5 million. It's changed the face of the battle. It's changed the face of war going forward from expensive high-tech weapons. Now Ukraine has taught everyone you could fight a war against superior numbers and superior armament with just drones. And that's what kept them in the game. However, Russia is producing a lot of missiles, since the Cold War, and very sophisticated ones. And Ukraine doesn't have missiles like that in any number at all. It's got a handful. And so the Patriots are key because they're the only thing that Ukraine has in order to protect its cities. And it's been given Patriots in the past, but it's been trying to get more. And currently, Russia is destroying all of the power generation, all the transmission lines, and so most of Ukraine has been plunged into a blackout in the last few days and is now facing a freezing winter, which again is putting enormous pressure on Zelensky, because they might have to capitulate simply because people in their millions are going to flee Ukraine because it's too cold. And 27 Patriots. So to put this into context, the Germans promised them 2. They had ordered from the States, and those 2 systems just arrived. You need a minimum of 10 to protect the biggest cities. From the beginning, they asked for 22 and never got them. 27, the backlog for Patriots, I think we're talking 5 years. So there's no way they're going to be able to make them. The only way you could get 27 is in the US stockpile. There's some 60 systems. However, the Pentagon has made it very clear we need those for our own defense, and the US stockpile of Patriots has already been depleted, because during the Israel-Iran missile exchange we had in the summer, they sent a lot to Israel, and so they're actually undersupplies for their own strategic defense. So there's no way that they're going to tap their stockpile. And Trump has also made it very clear that they're not sending Ukraine any more arms unless Europe pays for them. And like I say, then that's all going to be ordered and made. But the backlog to make them 27, it's not going to happen. It can't happen for years, because there just simply aren't any coming through the system. And the handful that's been given, basically Europe's tapped out. They've given all the spare Patriots they possibly could to Ukraine with this last 2. And they're going to have to just try and struggle through, which means the skies are open and the Russians just bombing them willy-nilly with massive drone strikes, which are followed by these new cruise missiles that Russia's been making. And it's making up to 2,000 a year now. So we can send several, half a dozen missiles every week against Ukraine, and there's very little Ukraine can do to prevent and protect itself from that.
Ben Aries, thank you very much for that and bringing your insight here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to have you on the programme. We now have a final update coming out of the conflict, and Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau has said that it is conducting a large-scale operation targeting corruption within the country's energy sector. The Bureau has reported that investigators have uncovered the activities of a high-level criminal organisation suspected of influencing key state-owned enterprises. According to the Bureau, the investigation involved more than 1,000 hours of audio recordings collected over a 15-month period, documenting evidence of widespread bribery and abuse of authority. Authorities also said that the group built an extensive corruption network designed to control strategic energy enterprises and manipulate decision-making within the public sector. The operation is part of Ukraine's broader effort to strengthen transparency and accountability, a key condition in its ongoing push for European Union membership and international support. We move west to